Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. First off, let me thank you all for bringing me up to 4,910 subscribers. I was waiting for the 4,910 to come about. I also want to thank him, Raymond, for coming through on the Cash App. He's the last one that did so. And to those of you that, and your shouts out to Geechee Man for vouching for my Jet Black Air Lounge. The confessions alone are something else. And on there, I try to put in snippets that help you to solidify in words what we understand. The other thing, too, is that I'm opening this up to talk about my last post, which is not an upload, but a post. My last post on YouTube was, did I not say that when we don't sign marriage contracts in the courthouses, they'll use other ways to get money out of you? Did I not say that fornicating with them in any way, form, or fashion will cost you because they won't deal with most of us otherwise? Did I not say that whatever it costs must be unfair by their own standards of what's fair? What now are we seeing play out? I'm not a prophet, so if I can see it, you can too. And the only things I needed to see this coming down the pike are experience, pattern recognition, and the pessimism that follows from the other two. Observe, notice patterns, and then form expectations pessimistically based on the first two steps. When unawakened men think you are a conspiracy theorist regarding Western women, you're on the right track. That's because they aren't theories. They're actual plans. Now, with that being the case, a commentator named Soda wrote a comment underneath. And what she wrote was, in these words, unfortunately, I don't think that's a Western woman thing. I think that's a woman thing. I've seen women from abroad finesse Western men to accomplish whatever the goal is in empty bank accounts and move on. Men need to be more self-aware and realize not all that glitters is gold. A lot of men chase an ideal of what a woman should look like and be like instead of looking into the character of who she really is. So, my dear brothers, it's a world of buyer beware. Make sure you vet the person properly and listen when they tell you who they are, because most of you don't. That is her comment. My reply is that I just said that we need to be more pessimistic. And if you come along and you say that this is something that we're going to have to be leery of from women in general, then that justifies more pessimism than what I'm expressing. There's more to that as well. If we're hearing about women even in Southeast Asia trying to scam Wyatt men, and they're not doing this to brothers, and we're not even hearing complaints about them trying this with brothers. What this tells me is that we're in a fairly good position right now in certain parts of the world. I don't know for how long. Bangkok is ruined, and the violence is already there. But I do know and understand this, that this justifies even more pessimism. We should be more pessimistic. We don't owe anybody an apology for not being for being pessimistic. We owe an apology for probably not being more. It is true that women from certain other places are into finessing men. Usually, the less ancient the culture is, the more they're into finessing men from abroad. The Dominican Republic does not have its ancient culture left. Its ancient culture would have been that of the Tainos. That's not there anymore. They're extinct. The cultures that have been brought in are pretty much the corrupted versions of what has been left under the corrupt Spaniards' culture. And even then, quite a few of them are nice. At least they are polite, and um, but they will brag about getting that Western Union poppy. And I oftentimes look at men who would do this and I say, well, if you're going to sit up and send money to somebody, then why don't you at least send it to someone whose Spanish isn't so damn ghetto? I mean, they are ghetto with the bleach and the weaves. And yeah, they got that problem too. They ghetto. I can tell by the way they speak they're ghetto. I also look at um, Colombia and Brazil where they have the sclopamine epidemic going on. And these also are no longer ancient cultures. The original Americans that inhabited these regions have had their cultures squashed. And the same thing has happened under the corrupt Spaniards and Portuguese, who at the end of the day are just Western Europeans. What remnants were left of these other cultures became corrupt because, hey, you got to survive. And frankly, they're exposed to the same Western media as the rest of the West, as North America, without an ancient culture to offset that. In Southeast Asia, the culture is ancient, and the debauchery and degeneracy that you see in Western movies is known to just be entertainment and not realistic. It's not true. It's not how you live. And even then, that's disappearing in Bangkok and probably in Pattaya soon to follow. But this whole notion that everywhere you go, they're going to be doing the same thing guaranteed is a notion. You see, everywhere you go, there's somebody that wants to do that. That part is very true, Sauda. We agree. But the notion that when you step off the plane in these other places, you will face this same thing, guaranteed, is not true. I'm not going to face this where I live now in Saudi Arabia as easily as I would in the States. In the States, pretty much anybody's coming for that. They're coming for the bag. I hate to say it, but I've learned this. In the States, women pretty much have to feel inferior about something to give me a shot. And I don't appreciate that because I don't feel inferior about anything. I understand why people may not like something or they may not trust something, even if it's one of my own traits. But that doesn't mean I feel like I'm an inferior person. So I don't look at women and say, well, because I don't like, because this is inferior about me, I want to try to get with a woman like that that's way up there and then get bitter when I don't get them. That's not what happens. Actually, what happens is they come to me with all their insecurities, and I don't like that. And then I start saying, well, I actually don't have these insecurities. Why are the insecure ones coming to me? And then I decide I'm going to start ducking and dodging the ones with the insecurities because, well, they got insecurities. I'm not trying to be burdened with that. And then the next thing that happens is that another one comes along because she's insecure about her shade. The other one because she's insecure about her weight. The other one is probably insecure because of a lisp. Things like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, you have to actually see something that you wouldn't want a man to have and then come to me, and I don't have these things. So you really believe that I'm just, by definition, worth less. You already believe that men are worth less, and now you believe that I'm worth less than other men. Never mind. We can't have conversations like that. I'm not going to see that here where I live. If I was single and I lived in a bigger city, I'd have a much easier time. That's the funny thing. That's the crazy thing about this. Once, even as a foreigner, once I'm in a bigger city, it's not that difficult. If I decide I want to marry a MILF, and because I'm old now and I ain't looking for more kids, I could do that. It could take some time, but it's not something that's just impossible and can't happen. It's none of that. None of that is the case. There's nothing like that here. There's not this, oh, you can't ascend past, you can't even ascend into what is compatible and comparable to you in your own situation. No. In the States, that's what it is. These environments are not the same. The upbringings are not the same. But if you are correct, and if I understand you correctly, that all women are going to face the temptation to do some of these same things, no matter where they're from, then that actually means that the women who don't do this are even better. Because there are environments where they can want to do the same things and they just simply don't do it. They just don't. Meanwhile, you've got Western women who have more on average already, and they can't pass up the temptation to take more away. And then when they're married, they start looking for actual real love because the husband's supposed to provide the security and another man gets to provide the romance without having to provide the security. Which is why he's free to provide the romance. He doesn't have the insecurity hanging over his head at every single turn of events. But here's the other thing. Men do need to be more self-aware. We know that not all that glitters is gold. We get that. The issue is that we don't see real gold to know that when it glitters. In the West, we don't see that real gold because it's hidden. So pretty much if you can see the glitter, it must not be gold. But if it doesn't glitter, it's definitely not gold. That's what it's like in the West. Being more self-aware, well, we do need to be more self-aware. We need to be, many of us are aware of ourselves, actually. It's another type of awareness that we don't have. Self-aware, easy. Awareness of what games women are going to play when they can get away with it is something that we're just now beginning to learn. And that is why we've got this red pill space, even with me, a Muslim, in it. That's why it's there. That's the awareness that we really need. A lot of men chase an ideal of what a woman should look like and be like instead of looking into the character of who she really is. Well, one of the reasons for that is that, you see, for us, the ideal of what a woman should look like is not identical from each man to the next. The ideal of what a man should look like and be like and everything else is damn near identical from one Western woman to the next Western woman. So they really are competing for the same few men. Most men are sitting up here like, well, if a woman's even just good looking to me and not to other guys, she still has an effing attitude. What a lot of women want is for us to sit up and accept a false dichotomy in which we have to choose between a woman that looks the part and a woman that knows how to behave, because frankly, Western women have been told to never do both at the same time. So even if a woman's been ugly all her damn life, and then a man comes along and he really does think that she's good looking, she'll sit up and say, well, damn, that's the one to whom I need to be bad, because I can't treat well a man that thinks I look good. That's the real question. Who told these women that in a world where beauty's not even that damn rare, that they cannot look the part and treat that man who sees them as looking the part like he means anything, like he's worth a damn? That's really the issue. Men have to make this tough choice, but it's not because of anything natural. It's artificial. And as I stated, it's not that we know it's artificial because while some women are attractive to many men, a man could look at a woman that every other guy says is attractive. He could still look at another woman and be like, well, yeah, but she's cute to me too. I'll pick her. And that woman that he looks at as being cute to him and who gets sometimes attention from other guys, but not all of the time, she will look at that man and say, well, wait, he's one of those that likes me, so I'm going to treat him badly. If I'm going to treat somebody well, it's going to be the guy that doesn't really like me that much. Or maybe the guy that's effing other women. That's what we're dealing with. Now, as a Muslim, I know that the paradigm is different. I know that. But a lot of Western Muslim women are acting like the non-Muslim Western women. So the Muslim men who are only looking to marry still face the same games. Instead of looking into the character of who she really is, how do we know? I mean, truth be told, if she has to feel insecure about something to do with her appearance or something outward, and that's what it takes for her to have a good character, does she really have a good character? Does she have a good character because she's insecure about her flat booty, even though we might like that? Because again, when you see men that all of y'all want, a lot of times these men don't even have really bad characters at heart. They just know that they got to be players when it comes to these women, because even when men look the part that women want them to look, and the women agree on this, when that man shows that he's dedicated, he's no longer interesting. Ask me how I know. Knew a dude that looked like Garfield Bright. I grew up with him, and he had them hands too. He could throw them hands and whoop behind. He was good at basketball. Chicks dug him. Guess what? He didn't cheat. So he got cheated on. And the women he dated they weren't nearly as bombshell as he was attractive to women. He got married, she still cheated. Now he's either married or engaged, but the woman's got a chronic illness. That's not his fault. It's not her fault, from my understanding. But the point is, if she didn't have this chronic illness and she was better looking, I already know what the deal would be. She'd have friend zoned him. Ain't nothing, there's no other reason she'd have done it, just that he's a good dude. Women need something to humble the F out of them before they even want a good man, especially amongst our own race. She said, so my dear brothers, it's a world of buyer beware. Make sure you vet the person properly and listen when they tell you who they are, because most of you don't. Vet the person properly. Sure, I agree. But what do you think men are doing? Now the men are vetting so properly, they're saying, okay, listen, we were fair. We gave Western women a chance. They kept failing, kept failing again. They failed tests that they would never forgive us for failing. They intentionally failed tests they wouldn't forgive us for failing out of ignorance because we didn't know we were being tested. So now how's this for vetting? She grew up in North America or Western Europe. We're not talking to her. We're not even trying to get her attention. That's vetting. When you say listen when they tell you who they are, because most of you don't, well, in actuality, many men will listen to what they know, but we're not taught really how to listen for that. That's something we got to figure out on our own, and we're just now recently beginning to explain to each other. And not only that, but men will tell you after they've tried enough times that no, a lot of these ladies don't really tell you who they are. They will tell you about flaws and imperfections, and then they downplay them. And then you find out later those are really big deals. So you really don't know when you're listening, when she's just taking accountability for a particular flaw, or being honest and upfront about it, or when it's actually a red flag. I've had to learn to see red flags in things you would not agree with me seeing red flags in, but that's where they are. Accents. Oh, yeah. Accents. Can you imagine? A New Orleans accent I already know is a problem. I have not met a sister with a typical New Orleans accent that didn't have some sort of stereotypical trifling business going on in her life. And I'm from the Gulf Coast. So, let's talk about Brittany Renner. Let's discuss that. When you take someone like Brittany Renner, could she have come into this faith without having gone through the phases through which she went first, racking up a 35 body count? Could she have done that? No, she could not. I'm not saying God couldn't guide her. What I am saying, though, is that I don't think she could have accepted the guidance, even if you brought it to her. I don't want to sit up and think this way, but let's call this what the hell it is. We men have to, we got to recognize patterns, right? Well, here's some patterns. Now, unlike Book of Alpharonomy, I don't think that she and Kevin Gates are a mismatch. Kevin Gates is like her. She is like Kevin Gates. Both of them are from the Gulf Coast. She's from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, and he is from the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. He's from Baton Rouge. It's the armpit of the states. That's the real truth of the matter. That's really what's going on. It is serious gigabosity and inward business. Yes, gigabosity is the word for it, for the way that a lot of black folk along the Gulf Coast live. We have a lot of Africanisms and carryovers from back home on the continent, but not all of them are positive. As a matter of fact, we have a lot that aren't. That's the real truth of the matter. That's really who we are. I hate to say it, but collectively speaking. Gulf Coast ninjas, on average, tend to suck. We're conservative on one hand, or at least we were when I was coming up, relatively speaking. But by the same token, we're ratchet. And the conservatism is fast disappearing, and the ratchetness is only getting worse. We don't understand is this. I'm mentioning Brittany Renner because Brittany Renner is the example of which we know. She's so infamous, the Book of Alpharonomy, who himself, I think he's Hebrew Israelite, but I'm not sure. He himself, who does not have, he is not Islamophobic. He's not against Muslims or anything of that nature, but he simply can't believe that she's actually seriously Muslim. He thinks that she's faking. And he thinks that we see her as a fake. No, in actuality, she's allowed to accept. She's allowed to come in and take it seriously. She's allowed to do that. She's still alive. And she's sane, relatively speaking, technically. But does that mean that she can preach? No, there's nothing for her to preach. There are people that are much more qualified than her or me or Kevin Gates, and that's not really saying much, to be honest with you. Being more qualified than either of us three to preach is really not saying much. But there are people that are far more qualified than us to preach. She's not. Ray Lil Black, same thing. Doing dirty movies, now she Muslim. I'm going to tell y'all straight, man, about Ray Lil Black. Ray Lil Black seems like somebody that could have, in fact, accepted without going through what she went through, because she was doing dirty movies, probably I'm sure she racked up a body count of 100 times Brittany Renner's. It was her job. But she stopped doing these things and stayed out of the limelight for many years, accepted Islam, made one video, and that was what brought her back into it. It was everybody else that put her back in front of people's attention. She made one video, simply said, yeah, actually, I am convinced I'm fasting this year. And this is after years of no activity. She even explained that while she stopped doing things years ago, some of the companies were holding scenes and things to release later on. So they're still releasing stuff from before she stopped filming. And that's why some people thought she was still active. And I was able to get at least somebody else who was not a liar to verify it. These are not the same. And so, in all honesty, it may be a woman thing, that's true, but number one, we already know that if something is a woman's thing, that when Western women get a hold of it, they exaggerate it if it's bad and they downplay it if it's good, or stifle it if it's good. That's one thing we already know. And number two, if that's a woman thing, then what that really means is that we probably need to go ahead and remove these temptations from women everywhere. Removing the legal ways that they can do some of these things that they'll do in the West and wherever else they can do it, like in China. And China already did. China was like, okay, you know what? You can have something when you leave, but you're going to have what you came in with. It was a cash grab for Chinese wives. That's what marriage was there. And so now you got these men that were saying, well, we won't get married because it's a cash grab. And then the government said, we're going to revamp this stuff because there it's a question of federal law. It's not left up to the individual provinces. So they wiped that away. And now the women are like, wait a minute, I can leave a marriage with what I came in with. Well, then since I can't get cash and prizes, screw that. So now a lot of women don't want to get married. Never mind. And what are they going to start doing? Suing men. Like you said, you think that's a woman thing. So what this may very well mean now is that men like Manosphere Hall of Fame are even more right than what we would have thought. I myself was going to wait for somebody to prove it before pointing to that. Your advice was not meant to be harmful. So I don't even think your advice is harmful. It's not that. But if it is in fact a woman thing, and we know the Western women take the bad and run with it and take the good and stifle it because, men have to suffer, then what's going to wind up happening? And I've been afraid of this and I've been saying this. And what this means is that women that are not Western are going to be taught these games and these tricks. And we've already been saying that this is in the making. I was one of the first alarmists to say this. Shahid Bolson of Middle Nation said that alarmism is not masculine. Paranoia is not masculine. He was right that they're not masculine or manly traits, especially when they're wrong. But it's not paranoia when somebody's really out to get you. It's not alarmism when the threat is actually real. And I stated years ago, before Kevin Samuels even started to really irritate women because he was so busy pointing fingers at men. But at that point, I stated that if we men don't get with these men from other countries and tell them what misandry is coming down the pike, it's going to creep into their societies through the misandrist women. And they would turn around and infect the local women that are not misandrous, turning them into such. I stated this. Now, what is going on? I can tell you Kuala Lumpur is a problem. A few years ago, it was a battleground. It's probably gone over to feminism now. I can tell you Riyadh itself has an undercurrent, a subculture that is a goddamn mess. Now, Riyadh might not be, but there's an underculture or subculture in Riyadh that is a mess. Oh, God, yeah, threesomes. That's what they call them. They use the English word. Got chicks in Riyadh that'll just be like, look, I'm not getting married. I need some. So what do? They'll travel somewhere, maybe jump out of a car or Uber or something, go into some neighborhoods, catch a man in the alley, open up their buy and say, if you don't give me some right now, I'm going to scream. And they get a quickie. Yeah, it's like that. I don't know how these women feel later on, but they're women that will sit up there in a car, and the ones that belong to this particular community. This is not most of Riyadh, but the problem is that everyone in Riyadh knows this exists. They just don't know what the numbers are, the population. But yeah, it's there. You got wives that'll sit in the car and tell their husbands to go invite the man pumping gas for a threesome one day. is bad. So I'm letting you know right now that this stuff is spreading. And what you were saying in a nutshell now was that my alarmism was correct. I want Shahid Bolson's uh, advice to be true, but it's not. I mean, technically speaking, he's right about it. I would agree that alarmism and paranoia aren't masculine traits when they're not warranted. I would agree. But what happens when they're warranted? Then it's not a question of masculinity or femininity. It's not a question of these. It's not just a question of accuracy. And what you have stated in a nutshell is, I'm accurate. Thank you. But I didn't want you to be. I don't want to be accurate, but that's what it is. And that's why I'm sitting there pointing at the Western niches first right now. I got to let these men know, because what I want them to do is I want them to reach out to these men in places in which they want to live. I'm trying to tell these guys here in Saudi about it, but they don't listen. Hell, I can't get my students to stop screwing up certain sentences in English. And I teach advanced classes. So it's no use in me trying to tell them about feminism and misandry. What I do is I merely say to them, listen, look into it on your own, but then understand that your sisters are being targeted for this stuff. And then they're going to be asked to spread it once they agree. But this notion that we need to focus on the inside more than we do on looks is something we already know. We've already heard about that before. We know, yes, look at the inside instead of looking at just the appearance. But the issue is that when you have to choose between looking decent and knowing how to behave, even though there's no biological tie-in to these things in women, there's no gene in the DNA sequence that if flipped in one direction, an on position, the beauty is there and the attitude can't be good. And if flipped in the other position, then the attitude is there and the beauty can't be there. Or there's a third position where you don't get the beauty or the attitude that you like, but there's no gene for the beauty and the attitude together. Well, since that's not encoded in the DNA, we're looking and saying there's no biological exclusion each one by the other. So where does this mutual exclusivity come from? That's where the Western woman is distinct. And she's now teaching women in other countries to be that same way so that she will no longer be distinct. It's not a question of buyer beware. It's a question of leave the environment where this is a damn problem and go into environments where it's not, at least when you're looking to start a family, and let the men also know what the hell is coming down the pike so that they can maintain this situation so that their sons and our sons will be able to, if we raise them to be good, responsible men, marry good, responsible women that also look the part, that also look nice. There's nothing wrong with being able to marry someone that looks the way you like and knows how to behave. That's for men and women. There's nothing wrong with that. But we men don't have this notion that, okay, you know what? If I'm handsome to women, I got to act a goddamn fool. We don't have that notion. Nobody would let us get away with that. Not in another country, not in another culture, another environment. No, they don't let you get away. Just if you're a guy and you're nice to look at, you don't get to just act a dick with women. Even if you're a womanizer, you better be somewhat polite about it. Then there's the West, where your politeness means you'll never be a womanizer. It means you'll never even have one. The difficulty is not surrounding the men. And really what we need to do, we don't need to vet in the West. What we need to do is stop signing marriage contracts. Don't make approaches either. And then when you are approached, only accept it if she seems to have more than you do. That's what it needs to be. For the safety of the men, that's what it needs to be. Because maybe she's not going to try to extort you through false accusations if she has more than you do. And if she doesn't, well, okay, good riddance. Stay by yourself because it's safer. That's what men need to do, because there's really no other way to flip this. The experience of the men in the West has not been one of just a conflict between the genders, like what's happened in previous generations. It's been a damn war. How do we know? Because the virginity of a male is still held against him. And that's how we know. By women. The very fact that a man is a virgin is held against him. And women are the ones that will hold it against him when the men won't. There was a time I was a virgin and I found that out. Consequently, when men are bitter, when men are combative, when men are on guard, Average Men Unplugged just uploaded about this. When men are either players or they're bitter or they're just on guard and they're pessimistic, whatever the case is, they learned it from the women around them in their environment. And that's the end of it. I hope that what I've said is a benefit. Thank you for commenting, and thank the rest of you for listening and bringing me up to 4,911 as the last count. And thank you, M. Raymond, for coming through on the Cash App. You were the last one that did so. And I want to thank you, Geechee Man, for vouching for my Buy Me a Coffee page, and especially for the first class. I mean that from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. And Gail at Night, shouts out to you. I hope you win. I forgot the name of the other victim, but I hope she wins too. As always, black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power, black patriarch until extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.